In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the knock sensors on this Cadillac SRX. There is an easier one that's on the front that you don't really need to take much out of your way, and there's a more difficult one in the back, and that's the one we're going to do in this video. Let's get into it. We're going to take this engine cover off. I'm going to use a T30 socket, loosen up this screw right here. Pull that screw out. Take the oil cap off, just twist, and grab the cover. Pull straight up. Now I'll just put the cap back on just so nothing falls down there. This connector right here goes to the O2 sensor that's on the top of the catalytic converter. We're going to disconnect that. There's a little lock tab there. You want to pull that out. And disconnect the connector. There's a wire tie over here. Just going to cut the wire tie. And that's loose. We're going to take these nuts off. Use a 15mm socket. Sometimes the stud will come with the nut, and that's okay. Pull that last nut out. Now, it's separated right there. And there is a gasket right here, so keep that in mind. We're going to take these nuts off. Use a 15mm socket. For this one, I'm going to have to use a ratchet wrench, but same size, 15mm. And take that off. That should be separated right there. You can hit it with a hammer. Use a pry bar. Good, that's loose. Disconnect the connector for the O2 sensor. Just pull this tab, pull that connector off. And if there's any wire ties holding the wire on, you want to disconnect those. I'm going to take these two nuts off, use a 15mm socket. And make sure you support the exhaust before you take that last nut off, just because it could fall. Just pull that down. This will just slide off. And come right down. From up top and reach along the back side of the engine, and we're going to disconnect this connector. This goes to the front O2 sensor for the rear converter. Just try to pop that lock off first. And disconnect the connector. Just like that. And then follow along the wire and see if there's any retainers. There's a wire tie holding it on right here. So I'll just cut that. There we go, that's cut. So that's loose. Disconnect the connector for the second O2 sensor. Just try to get this lock off. Just going in through the wheel well area, near the tie rod. Disconnect that, and then disconnect the connector. There we go, it's disconnected. And then follow it back, see if there's any wire ties, which there is. And I'll cut that. And just using some side cutters, cut the wire tie. There we go. And that's loose. Now we're going to take the nuts off for the manifold, or the top part of the converter. I'm going to use a 15mm swivel socket. And take the nuts off. And just use a magnet if you need to. And I'm going to take the last one off. Make sure you support the converter because it's going to be loose once you get this one off. That nut off. Now slide it out and slide it down. Using a 15mm socket, we're going to take this bolt out. Take that longer bolt out. And these lower two bolts, take these out. Same 15mm socket. That one out, and this bracket, it slides right out. Follow the shield, and there's a 10mm bolt right there. Use a 10mm socket, take that bolt out. We're just trying to take the shield off. You take that bolt out, and the shield will come right off. Disconnect the knock sensor. Just pull that lock tab out. Push down. Disconnect the connector. Using a 13mm socket, loosen up the bolt. And take the bolt out, pull the knock sensor off. Take the new knock sensor, just make sure this area is clean, which it is. I'll thread this in. Make sure this is lined up with the plug where it was. Get this closer. I'm going to torque this bolt to 17 foot-pounds. I'll plug it in and push down on the lock tab. And I take the shield, line it back up. Get the bolt started. Make sure the wires are under the shield. Snug that down. If you have to adjust the shield a little bit, just move it up so that hole's lined up. That's good. Get the long bolt started. And the other two bolts. And tighten the bolts down. And go back and snug those down. That's tight. Now I'll take the gasket off. Make sure that surface is clean. You can wipe it down with a rag. If you need to, use a scraper. Take a new gasket and line it up. Take the converter and slide that in position. Go over the studs. Make sure you have one of the nuts in your hand. We'll get that started. Get the other nuts started. I'm going to tighten these down. Just go opposite side. Tighten it down evenly, diagonal. If you can get a torque wrench in here, you want to torque these to 15 foot-pounds first and then 34 foot-pounds. Do the best you can. All right, those are tight. Connect the lower O2 sensor. Make sure it locks in place. Then you can put that safety lock on. It's in there. And if there's extra wire, you want to just wire tie that out of the way. I'll just wire tie this right here next to this bracket. And just trim the excess. Connect the connector up top for the O2 sensor. And add that extra lock. Slide that in position. And if you have extra slack, you just want to wire tie that out of the way. And just trim the excess on the wire tie. Take the old manifold seal off. Slide that down. Just going to take a rag and just wipe it. If there's any material, you just want to use a scraper. Just scrape it off. But this looks pretty good. Take the new seal, line it up, and put it in position. Take this exhaust seal off. You can use a scraper. Just pry off any excess debris. I'm just going to use a grinder and just grind off any excess. You can use a hammer and just tap. Sometimes that helps to get some pieces, small pieces of the seal off. Take your gasket, line it up, set that in position. On these back two seals, we're going to do the same thing. Just use a scraper, scrape off the seals. And put your new gaskets on. We're going to do the same on the sealing surfaces on the front converter. We'll clean these up. Just take a hammer. And scrape it off. We'll do the same on the sides here. That looks good. Slide the cat up. You don't have to put it on the studs yet. We'll get the back two lined up, the two flanges. There we go. These two are lined up. Make sure this gasket's on and get this flange lined up. Push it up, take one of the nuts and get that started. And line everything up, front lined up. And you can put one of the nuts on up top if you can reach it. Get all the other nuts started. Make sure the flange is lined up and tighten those down. Tighten these up. Connect the lower O2 sensor wire. Plug that into the connector. Lock it down with that extra lock. And if there's excess wire, just use a wire tie, tie it out of the way. And trim the excess. Now we'll put the nuts up top. If you have a stud that came out, you want to put that stud in. Get that started, and all the other nuts. Tighten these down. We're going to torque the nuts the first pass 15 foot-pounds. Just alternate from corner to corner, just to tighten it down evenly. And go to 34 foot-pounds for the second pass. Connect the connector for the O2 sensor. Lock it down and put the lock through. And if the wire is excessively long, you want to wire tie that down so it's out of the way. And trim the rest. Take the oil cap off. Take the cover, line it up. Push it down, put the oil cap back on. Take the bolt, get that lined up, and snug it down.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.